Hey guys, welcome to MBTV. This is your host, or one of your hosts, Daniel, and I'm here with Trey and our special guest, Wences. And we're going to be talking a little bit about INFJs today, since this is a strictly NF chat. We're going to talk about INFJ dynamics with cognitive functions, INFJs in their past, just a whole bunch of INFJ topics. So maybe you guys can introduce yourselves and we'll get rolling.
Okay, so maybe I start. Hi, my name is Wences. I have gotten into MBTI probably like 3 or 4 years ago. I also have a channel on this topic, but I'm also been interested in Enneagram and just like kind of self-development topics. And what I found most interesting, and that's why I'm so excited to talk to both of you, is that specifically with relationships with ENFJs, but also with other INFJs, I have grown a lot and learned a lot. And it's very interesting to me to understand, or to like kind of like see things from your perspective. And so I'm glad we're really doing this and talking about it.
Great.
So thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you. And Trey, you just everybody kind of knows Trey a little bit already. But pretty much we have 2 INFJs and 1 ENFJ here for the people who are not aware. And we actually, it seems, Trey knows his Enneagram. And I believe me and Wences, also known as Below the Radar, Above the System, right, on YouTube, we both share Enneagram 9, it may seem. So we're going to maybe dip and dabble with Enneagram in this call at Trey's if Trey wants to jump in on that. So let's get into it. Let's talk about, the ENFJs and INFJs. Is there anything you wanted to bring up specifically, Wences, that you had that you wanted to talk about?
I really found the auxiliary function interesting. That's something you suggested, because first, I really don't get the whole thing about how ENFJs work with their second function. And maybe Trey and me, we can also talk about how we use our second function, because, and specifically the differences, because the second function is so not something we're bound to, like we can go into it and go out of it. And that's a huge difference to like the first, if you have like FE as your first or second function. And it's something I understood just like while being close to an ENFJ, to like kind of understand what's really going on. So that's what I found interesting. And then also the fact that if the second function is a judging function or perceiving function, that also changes a lot. And so those are the topics I would like to start with.
Sure. We have to remember, for being an INFJ and ENFJ are different, right? Because you and Trey are more perceptive to your day-to-day life, where you use your extroverted feeling to really kind of use as a tool for your first function. So I know from experience with INFJ friends and Trey, that working with Trey, everything that he does with people, it's always to fuel and engage his intuition, right? And so NI is really a perceptive function. It's a really perceptive way of interacting with the world. It's not really interacting with the world. It's really just kind of like dazing off into the sunset or wherever you're looking. I don't know how many times I've caught Trey just in the middle of a live call and he's just somewhere thinking about everything, And so it's kind of funny how such like a simple switch of roles really plays a role in how we engage in our day-to-day life, right? And and where that drive comes from, where you'll see people who have judging functions that lead, right? Like me, where I lead with extroverted feeling, that leads into my life in a way where I'm really out trying to get out into the world. I'm trying to create that harmony. I'm trying to be, expressive, matching myself up to the world. And it's kind of like I'm actually trying to physically explore the world in a kind of emotional, personal way, right? Whereas I use my intuition to kind of engage socially and help me out through life situations. Whereas for you and Trey would use extroverted feeling for that kind of thing, trying to use extroverted feeling for particular life situations and navigating yourself either with people or through making decisions.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you can.
Yeah, I see what I wanted to go into more, and I think this is something you can't really read in the textbooks or online, is, for example, the way I use FE. It's like I go through life and I have my plan of, this is how I want, let's say, my next 5 years to go, or this is how I want to approach life, or how everything should work. And then I see like people, and I know like a group of people, let's say at work, and I realize if I match to them, if I connect with them, then I can get what I want. And this is said from a not trying to be like, I'm selfish kind of way. It's just like how it really is. It's not that I don't connect with people. I can have like deep emotions for people, but it's like something I do in the moment because I want to connect with them. Like I think INFJs have more of a choice of, am I connecting to those people or not? And that can be a positive and negative thing in a way that, like if I have negative people around me, I think it might be easier for me to disengage.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, I have experience with ENFJs that they have a stronger hold of, like they feel everything around them. And what I've experienced, they feel everything, but they have much more control of what they let in or how much they can
Yeah. And so you're totally right though. One of my INFJ best friends, she just has this ability to like, her one of her main objectives in life is to just like kind of really know people on a really personal level, and this has really helped her in her work relationships and in her friendships. INFJs are just generally really great at not really judging people, in the sense of accepting everybody for who they are, and really just there to really understand and fixate on it. Like I actually call, like personally, I call INFJs the social scientists. Right? Like, there's that scientist who kind of like, she was like all about, observing apes. And so she lived with apes and she tried understanding like apes. I forgot her name.
I don't know, but I watched the movie.
Yeah, I watched the movie too. But pretty much INFJs are like, scientists that just love to be like in the pool of people. And they're like, oh, wow. Like, and I'm just here and I'm like, I'm learning so much. And they're like, apple, here's an apple. And then like the person's like, oh, cool, we're friends now. And then the INFJ is like, yes.
Yeah, it's
INFJs are apes.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to ask, how you see it, Trey, because this is how I would describe it. It's more interesting, like to see, oh, that actually worked. Like I kind of understood that. That's more, I think, more important to me than actually to have like a continuous bond with people.
Yeah, I agree. For the most part, when I'm talking with people, I'll say something, and I really thought about what I was saying beforehand, and I like thought about the best way to make it sound, what word choice would be better, like all this stuff, and then I let it out, and then when they're like, oh, cool, and it goes really well, I'm like happy because like it worked and because we have a connection, but at the same time, I don't really care for that as much as I do the fact that I got it right.
What you like more, that you got it right, or that you like really connected with them?
I liked it much more that I actually got it right. That's actually what my focus is on. Like it's great and everything, having like that connection, and I definitely do value that. But for the most part, I'm more concerned with whether or not I understood things correctly to get it out correctly. That's more what I'm concerned with. So that's what I care about more. If I got it wrong, or I could have done better, or it could have been taken wrong, but the person took it the right way, and then I realize afterwards it could have been taken wrong, then I'll be like, okay. And I won't even feel the connection as much anymore because I'm so concerned with working it through my head how I could have said it better to eliminate that, and stuff like that.
Yeah, I used to feel really guilty about that. That's what I also wanted to ask you, Daniel, because like I used to feel completely guilty about that, especially in comparisons to ENFJs, because then I had ENFJs in front of me, and for me it was like, when I was less developed and really like wasn't aware of myself, I wasn't really able to admit that. But for me, looking at an ENFJ, there was such purity in that, because there was like really caring about like connecting, and if there was like a disengagement, it was because there was like fear of what's going to happen, because ENFJs cannot just disengage just like that, you know, so they were not,
yeah.
So, you know, there's not this, like, I've went on with people my entire life where I just went really deep into really closeness, really fast. And I pissed a lot of people off. Like, this is from my childhood, because like after that, I completely was somewhere else, and people were completely, you know, hurt in a way that I could just disengage like that. And so I felt really guilty about
Door
that.
slam, right?
And it wasn't even like a door slam in a way, I hate you, I don't want to see you, and I go away. So I never really understood that this was something that was different for me than for others. I thought, well, we had this great connection right now, and now I'm going to play soccer. Like, I just was somewhere else, and the more and more I got rejection for that, I kind of felt bad about who I was. And it took me a while, to a point where I just couldn't take it anymore, because, you know, I made myself, like, I always wanted to engage. I wanted to, like, I made myself to a point where I tried not to disengage, to always stay in one mental or in one FE mode. And that's very unhealthy for us. Like, we need to jump around. Yeah. And what I found with ENFJs, and I think that's what ENFJs have to learn is, because while I went through that transition, I pretty much went through it with another ENFJ, and for them it's, or not for that, for that for that ENFJ, and I think it's a lot for a lot of ENFJs. It's this feeling of being controlled, like that there's or that you or they are scared that they can be controlled, so they do everything not to, like, absorb too much. So there's always this external focus of I have to express. And I think there comes a lot of peace with understanding that there's some part of perceiving that that you have to accept, and that it's okay to kind of, like, let a little bit in, because for no matter what type it is, we need, like, that balance. So I have learned for myself that I need to engage more, I need to express myself more, because, and not only perceive, because I always used to perceive, and that's all I did. And so I kind of absorbed other people's emotional states, and that's it. And now I, like, try to express more of myself, so others can also absorb some of my energy, and we kind of balance each other out.
Because you know what, like, when you really use that part of you to express, you really bring out that authenticity that you yourself have. You know, you yourself, like you and Trey, have very pure forms of curiosity within people, and so you guys can't forget to show that to the world. You know, that's you interacting with the world, right? You know, so you have to remember to express that. As far as what you were saying about, you know, I think it was like feeling guilty about not connecting with people, or like just kind of disengaging, right? There's something in Model G, and I can't talk much about it because, actually I can't. You don't want to bring it up. I want to bring something up for you and just see what you guys think about it, because it's a really cool idea.
I was actually wanting to bring that up as well. I don't know if it's the same thing we're talking about, but I wanted to, because it was something I was actually thinking about when I was taking out the trash today.
Yeah.
I was thinking about, just while you were finding that, how the intuition that ENFJs use and INFJs use differ, because a dominant NI user is actually using more of
I found it.
NI, while
you can still
ENFJ uses a lot of extrovert intuition based off of Model G, right?
Yeah.
So I thought that was interesting, because I've seen a lot of NI users, and they'll use, it seems like NE and NI, and I'm like, what is going on? Because, like, they'll bring up a point that they want to expand on, and I don't see it necessarily. You know what I mean? Like, it's like with extrovert intuition, a lot of times they'll have a set of ideas or a set of different possibilities, and they'll look at them all, and they'll treat each one as the same unless there's something that stands out, usually. Yeah. But for me, that's never how it is. It's always, you know, which one of these explodes into something else, you know what I mean? And so it's always like, which one, that's irrelevant, that's relevant, that's relevant, that's relevant. Whoa, you know? And so the thing is, when a ENTJ or ENFJ grabs an idea like that, it's interesting to see, you know, where they'll pick it up. Like, I remember Blake used to say things about like business opportunities or whatever that I used to be like, you know, I don't really think that'd work, or I don't think it's a good idea, like, because it didn't really fit the whole. Now, sometimes he did, for at least to me, you know what I mean? So when he brought up like Slack, for example, Blake was the one that originally brought up the idea of Slack.
Right.
And when he brought up the idea for the channel and having Slack as a community for the channel, I was like, boom, I know that's good. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so it happened. But then what I've come to find out is that, you know, Damon actually took a lot of Blake's ideas that I didn't necessarily think were good ideas, but ran with them because they did work. And he treated that as a, remember how I said extrovert intuition treats all the ideas as if they are the same in a way. And except when they stand out, like different ones might stand out or be special to them for some reason. And that's when I can see an ENTJ using extrovert intuition, treating that idea as the same thing, as saying, okay, no, that idea is just as good. You know, we can use that too. Why not? You know what I mean? While I would be like, no, it doesn't, like, you know, come together in this big convergence. So it's just interesting to see the difference in a lot of NI users, like the ENFJs and ENTJs, and how they use NI.
I think
So I found the Model G thing, which I'm about to talk about, but I wanted to go back into what Wences was saying before about FE and its being in its dominant role, and kind of like she touched up on SE and how it plays a role. I forgot what she said. You said something about how, you know, when you're talking, like, you know, disengaging, right? And the fact that, like, there's this kind of personal value that's somewhere else now, kind of, or like you get what you want and you leave. And I think that maybe Enneagram might have to do with that kind of idea, or maybe there's like an ideology with that. But ENFJs are different in that sense, because when we're how we can engage with anybody, pretty much, like whether it's like a stranger on the street or it's somebody we know, and to really carry that out, we really are concerned with being okay with people. We're really concerned about harmony.
Being on good terms with them. Right?
Being on good terms with them, yeah. Being on super good terms with them. So like that's why if I heard that somebody didn't like me, or like if I was at like a job and, you know, they said, one of the guys I work with would say, oh, you know, this person doesn't like you. I'd be like, what? Why? What did I do? And I'd go to them. I'd go straight to them and be like, what did I do? Like, you know, it's something that's like of my immediate concern, right? And that's a trait or a characteristic of extroverted feeling. It's being okay, making sure people are being okay in their own environment, right? Like a good example right now is, right now I'm concerned with, you know, the users in the chat and making sure their questions are going to be answered. And I'm concerned with you and Trey, and if you're comfortable. And I'm rotating all these different ideas about the harmony and people being okay in this environment, you know, without even thinking about it, right? Whereas, you know, for you guys being, you know, being in your thoughts is at your forefront. And for you, it's just so easy to start to, I guess, intuitively put things together, start to, you know, create a framework for what you're hearing. So I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does make sense, but I also feel like, don't you, like, you probably go through life, and if you look at us, there's this thing of they don't get something, like in a way of there's.
It's actually really weird you say that, because I was actually just thinking that about my friend that I'm not going to mention. I mean, she doesn't watch this, but you know, there's something there though. I don't know what it is, believe me. And
that's exactly, in my opinion, that's exactly this dominant kind of thing. That there's this, because the reason why you think about all those things, it's because there's like some kind of thing in your way of seeing the world or engaging with the world that is very evident to you. And, you know, it's so like your second nature that you don't even think about it. And for us, if we're able to create a situation, that's what I meant. Like, I really was like all those situations that I mentioned, that I got close to people and we're talking about like meeting somebody for the first time, talking them to for half an hour, having like a deep connection, and then just leaving. And I hurt a lot of people along the way, especially in my teens. And this wouldn't have happened if I had your worldview. If I had your way of seeing the world, I would have known.
You know what it
this
is?
Specific thing. Like I wouldn't have gotten to it, like, because I didn't want those people to be upset with me. I didn't want to hurt them.
You know what it is? It's, and like this can go into a lot of different areas, but the way that I saw this with my friend being an INFJ, and this is actually a really personal, I'm surprised I'm even sharing this because, you know, I didn't think I would actually bring this up. But it's interesting you say this because my friend that I'm thinking of, she wants to aspire to so many things, but a lot of her value systems don't necessarily involve her exploring the world and really creating new experiences in the way that would develop her way of succeeding and success, right? And so I look at the lifestyle she lives, and you know, she wants specific things, and you know, she goes one thing at a time without there being that much flexibility. And so, you know, me and her live totally different lives. I'm totally flexible, and I just like kind of dive into kind of social situations, and you know, we're both very entrepreneurial at heart, right? And or we want, she's more, you know, INFJs are vision based, so she wants to fulfill her vision, but there's this kind of like lack of an extroverted sensing value, right? There's a lack of focus on that. There's a lack of like really getting out there, right? Just jumping, right? And, you know, going after totally like what you want. I don't know what that's about. I don't know if it's like the lack of being able to be in the environment and being able to pursue things. That's why in my INFJ video that I just did, I wanted to express that an area of growth for INFJs would be to have friends who are ESTPs or ISTPs or types that have extroverted sensing, to bring you more into kind of, or ENTJs, right? Or types that are just doers in the sense that can help you really get out there, really motivate you, right? Because INFJs can be really great at anything, right? Because you guys engage more with your introverted logic than you do with your sensing. That's just how it is. But because of that, there's this gray area to the untapped unknown of what you can really aspire to, right? And on an individual to individual basis, you guys can succeed, but it's at such a slow pace, right?
Exactly.
So I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah.
You know, I'd like to comment on that and something else you said earlier, because when you said that, you know, we move at a slow pace, it makes a lot of sense. But at the same time,
like, you're like turtles with all the answers, and you just move so slow. It is just like
we're lacking SE. We're lacking SE. I'm listening to hardcore rap every day and getting like, I need to get so pumped up in order to just do like just a little bit.
Yeah, what I was saying is that like you know, a lot of my life, like if I think about where it's headed and stuff, you know, and a lot of people say NI users know their future, and like I always thought like it's only short term. You know what I mean? I only really knew my future up to a certain point. It was only like this next week. You know what I mean? It was never anything. I could see conversations that would happen and stuff like that, but it was never anything beyond that. And then you know, now I've understood myself a lot better, and I know how I am, and so I can see now a lot clearer before, like the rest of my life, like where I'm going to be doing, what kind of person I'm going to be, and stuff like that. And for me, it's not necessarily that I want to accomplish a lot in a sense. It's more like I want to accomplish a certain kind of state and environment, and that's pretty much it. If I can be what I think I'm going to be in the future, and if I can get there, which I'm pretty confident that I will, and then I can have people around me and I can influence others and help others, then there's just like, and understand things better. That's like all that together is really what I want. And I can kind of see it in different ways that it will probably most likely happen. And that's what I'm okay with. So like, it's really interesting because like when I've been thinking about this a lot recently, like for a dominant NI user, I think life is an interesting thing in the sense that for them, it's just like, it's going to unfold the way that it is. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
For dominant NI users, there's a lack of SE, and it's just like, look, life is going to happen the way it's going to happen. And so like it's really interesting because all it is like the spectating of life. But one more thing I wanted to say really quick, sorry, is that earlier you said something that I wanted to emphasize on, and that was Daniel. You said, "What did I do wrong?" when you were talking about social conflicts and stuff. Like, oh, what did I do wrong? Like, what happened? And I just wanted to expand on that a little bit because for me, it's never what did I do wrong. It's what happened. And so
Yeah.
it's not, I don't know who it was. I don't know, because normally what will happen is when there's some kind of social conflict with me, let's say, some friend of mine and I had a social conflict and I see the conflict. I know that there's a disturbance. I can kind of feel that there's an issue. And so I bring it up and I'm like, all right, so something's going on here. And I'll explain both sides. I'll be like, it could be me because of this, that, and the other. It could be you because of that, or the other. Or it could be both of us because of this, that, and that. And I just like logically lay it out, and I try to find out what it is. Now, a lot of times, I try to make sure that I get all of it out first because if you only get part of it, they may interrupt you and like get upset. But if you can explain all points, because normally I'm trying to find if I did something wrong, if you did something wrong, if it was both of us together that just had some miscommunication, you know what I mean? And so there's this big, instead of what did I do wrong, I don't want to put the fault immediately on myself. You know what I mean?
Kind of thing. You look at it from the outside perspective.
Sorry, I missed that. What?
That's fine. As I said, that's also part of this engagement. You're not like in the conflict and you think, what did I do wrong? You look at it from an outside perspective and you kind of like absorb the situation as if you and the other person were equal.
Exactly. I don't want to put the fault on me because it's almost like I'm separate from me and I'm putting the fault on someone else. It's almost like I'm pointing fingers at someone else if I blame myself. And at the same time, I kind of like the way that you were saying it, Daniel, because it makes sense to automatically take it on because there was probably a point that you could grow, but there is also always a point in which you couldn't have done anything more. You know what I mean? And it was all up to the other person because there are two sides in a relationship. You know what I mean? And so, but I do like the immediate. It's kind of TE in a way. You know what I mean? Because TE is all like, how could we fix this issue? What's the solution to accomplish the goal versus an understanding like a NI user, a dominant NI user might be seeking for.
If I can, I wanted to get a little bit into this flexibility thing that you said, Daniel, about, because normally, like, I think it's something people may misinterpret because they think, well, aren't judges less flexible in a way? Like, if you look at it from a really, like, high perspective, I personally completely agree with you because I don't think it's only an SE thing. I think it's also an NE thing in ENFJs because if you're like in your element and you're more extroverted, then your NE part, which you also have in you, is being more evident. Like I've seen it mostly like really visible in ENFJs that they do more things and they do them simultaneously, and it's a more like a broader kind of like way. And I think it helps a lot for ENFJs to become more like that and to become more SE and more NE once they go more into FE mode. So the more I express, the less I absorb, the more I can first off go and explore more ideas, and the more I have strength to kind of like go out and do something because my mind is not so occupied by absorbing everything. So it's like becoming more and more of an ENFJ, and I think for ENFJs it's very healthy, and I've seen it when they become more of INFJ, INFJs themselves, and it's kind of like just balancing both sides and not going too deep. Like I've experienced ENFJs when they're like really unhealthy and they go completely into FE mode, like when they have not found that switch yet, that they have to be more, and I just like kind of like let it in, that there's just they're just flaky. Is flaky the right word? That you just say something, and now flaky is not the right word. What I meant is like you say something and they take it completely personal and jump at it and so on and just like react.
Yeah.
Very refocused. And INFJs get just so like I was in that state where you don't do nothing. You just kind of like let everything just come into you, and you don't react anything, and you just become, I don't remember the word, but you just completely numb out in a way. And so for both,
like disengaged maybe.
Yeah, not just that. It's just like I don't feel anything.
Or detached probably.
Also, like yeah, all those things, but mainly plethoric.
I think I can relate to this. I think it's kind of like
word cathoric, something like this. No, how do you call when you can't move?
Oh, like paralysis? Like a...
Yeah, I'll think of the word. It's just like
words that are not it.
You care about the world. You just become completely... I'll think of it. But okay, I'm sorry, Trey. Go on.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. So I was just gonna say that I kind of see what you're saying. Like for me, there'll be some conflicts that, like, you know, or some scenarios where I don't really know how to react necessarily. But the thing is, while the ENFJ would have to find a way to react and would dive into their NI to find some kind of way to react, and regardless of whether or not it was actually good enough to handle the task, in a sense that, you know, it actually equalized everything and they were able to make it all okay, they are still very concerned with making that decision and making sure that they at least try to harmonize in the environment. While if I'm put in a scenario like that, I may have a really difficult time with a certain scenario. Maybe there's some difficulty or something's strange about it, or I don't know, and it's just, I'm kind of like, in a way I'm paralyzed. In a way I don't want to move because anything will make it wrong. You know what I mean? There's so many, like, there's many different things I can do, and each one is going to end up in failure, most likely. So when that happens, it's more of a, let's just see how it happens, because there's really no point in making a decision, because I know all these for sure are gonna turn out bad. But let's just let's just watch how it happens. You know what I mean? Instead of necessarily engaging in it, because if you engage, you can kind of be pointed at fault. Someone can kind of say, "Oh no, that was you. You did that. You did that." You know what I mean? And so there's a moment where you can just kind of sit back and be like, I'm not going to do anything, and I'm just going to see how it happens and watch. And that's just, you know, INFJs are more concerned with the understanding behind it, so they don't necessarily feel that they need to make a decision. I do quite a bit sometimes, but if I can't find one that will work or that I know will result in something better or good, then there's really no point making a decision in the first place. You might as well just watch how it happens. And sometimes something good will come out. You know, sometimes, like, you know, you'll be waiting for an explosion and for everything to you know, mess up, and you'll be like, well, I wonder how this is going to happen. So you're watching it, and then something happens, and you know, it explodes, but it wasn't very big, and it didn't release the kind of effect you were expecting, and you're able to fix things from there on out.
Well, you know, there's something funny about that, and it's like a common thing with I guess inferior extroverted sensing types, where this idea of like just letting things kind of plan out, and to a degree, I actually do that too, because I have like a decent NI, you know, myself, and sometimes I could just be like that for I'll give you my mindset, and then I'll explain how it kind of pans out for INFJs. For me, I have like this kind of struggle sometimes where I could be like, you know what, I'm just going to let things just happen the way that they're going to happen. You know, I kind of align myself for this path anyway. So what happens on this path will happen, and I'll just fight through it, right? And I'll just make it work, right? But the idea is that the idea comes from like being in the environment, making it work, right? And so there's flexibility and some kind of control with the things that happen to me. Though I believe everything happens for a reason, you know, based on like the decisions we make. But the idea that it differs with me is that I'm actually in direct control, and I have a responsibility and accountability over what happens to me. And so I telling me, you know, oh, everything's just going to happen. But I'm saying to myself, like, yeah, things are going to happen, but I'm going to convert it into where I'm going to make my own destiny, right? And so what kind of happens differently with an INFJ from what I've seen is that when you kind of put aside your environment, your extrovert sensing, and you just like, you let things happen, you know, you can let really negative things build up to a point where you're forced to take action, right? And a good example of this is like, let's just say, you know, you're living somewhere and like, you know, you really care about your personal space, and, you know, you just have a whole bunch of people coming in and out of your place, and people are living with you, or maybe you're not in direct control of something in your environment that really doesn't feel good for you. Or just as an example, what would happen is over time, like you just have these emotions build up, and this more and more lack of control of your environment. So like you see, you know, you can see an INFJ switch from, cool, this is my path, I'm just going to let like the universe kind of let it do its like thing. But then you have yourself where eventually it starts to get to you, and you're like, well, I really don't like this direction, and then I'm going to change it now because it's too much, right? I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes total sense. But what I thought about when Trey said it, that he doesn't want to like make decisions, or well, it was like that for me, and I let it build up to a point where I had to take a decision because I knew if I just let it go, it's just gonna get worse. And the least worst decision I could make would mean that I would completely have to change, that I would crush somebody to a point where I thought, I don't know if they're gonna, you know, be okay after this. And once I had to make this hard decision, I kind of like changed my perception on that I decided I have to take a little bit more control into my life, because I cannot let myself get to that point again. And this is where I really changed, and where I became more extroverted in the way that I understood, okay, no, I have to make more decisions. And I think one of my biggest fears was that when people see that I can make decisions, and I can make such strong decisions, because what it meant was I was in a very intense emotional situation, and my decision was something like a door slam, and I was scared when I do it, people will see that I'm not that good. And I survived that. And because I survived that pretty much, now I'm much more willing to take decisions. And I think that's very healthy for INFJs. And for ENFJs, I've experienced if they have like low self-esteem, or they're not developed in a way, it's more of I have to take always a decision. I always have to be in charge and never let anything happen. And if they get into a situation where they're just forced to accept the situation, and they see that they can still survive, then that's what I meant. You know, you know you're gonna survive, but you also know how much control you actually have. So you're much more willing to kind of like see where something goes, because by letting something in, you can explore a new world, and then you can take control again. Like you're not that scared once you know you can. You know, you've risen. You're like a phoenix from the ashes. You've risen. You know that you can do it. Then you're like much more willing to like be more open. And I think this is what both types in their own way have to learn. And most of the time, or how I experience, and with the ENFJ that I went through, because we did this kind of like simultaneously, it was exactly those 2 points, and this changed everything. Like I'm a completely different person, he's a completely different person. It's really interesting. Like that's how I see it as an INFJ. That's so interesting that this happened and we survived that.
Yeah, and like there's kind of like, you know, I always refer to introvert and extroverted types as like the struggle buddies of the types, because you guys, you know, every type pairing like that, like ENFJ and INFJ, they kind of have similar struggles. And so, you know, the INFJ that I'm referring to, we always meet up, and like we always find ourselves in crisis mode for some reason at the same time sometimes. And we'll meet up and we'll just talk it out, and you know, we have like the reversal of like the situation that we're in.
It's so crazy.
And it's like you have like the opposite situation I have, and then she's like, the opposite situation you have, and then we just figure it out, and then that's it, you know.
Yeah. Like, and what I had to understand most about ENFJ is that I cannot just take their NI as something solid. Like if they're like creating a world or something, I can't like dive into this world and just kind of like lay down and enjoy this world they created, because it's just something they do for the moment, like I do with my FE.
Right.
And I have to
remember, for you, NI is the house. For me, NI is the hammer. Right.
Exactly. And that took me a while. Like even if I knew it on paper, it took me a while to really not like, because I used to like listen to music that ENFJ always like posted or did and so on. And when I listen to music and I express myself, this is really the world I'm living in, and I'm actually communicating through that. And that's like my real house. And it took me a while to understand that this is just like a hammer in a way, and it's okay and it's beautiful for the moment. But it's not something that is as solid for that person and that they wouldn't change if they have to.
Yeah, because you have to remember, for an ENFJ, NI is really our tool. It's the way that we really deal with situations, decisions, you know, and at times interacting. It's also the gateway to getting to know ENFJs on a deeper level. You know, you don't see NI when you first meet an ENFJ. You don't see you don't see emotions or extrovert feeling when you meet an INFJ. Or actually, yeah, I mean, INFJs are usually pretty quiet, and then they kind of open up to you if you kind of built that, you know, that kind of bond. But a lot of people don't see my NI unless, you know, they get to know me after a while.
Yeah, then they see how deep you actually are, right? People sometimes.
Yeah, a lot of people think I'm really aloof on the outside, but I'm really not. It's just, you know, I'm interacting with all these people to create that kind of framework of people or understanding people, and it's just like people think I'm just like running around, you know, or I'm just doing my thing without a second thought. But there's this whole kind of plan orchestrated behind it, you know. And so I can blow people away about how much I know about them, similarly as an INFJ can do, and you know, and how you guys climb up mountains for people.
Yeah, like I know, like INFJ, like what, like I can just start like I'm at a karaoke party, and I can just like be there somewhere in the background, just sit there, and then I just go on stage and I put on this show, and people are just like shocked that it can just switch like that. And after half an hour, I'm so exhausted, I'm going home, you know. But
yeah.
Yeah.
You know, I think it's funny. You said INFJs climb mountains for people, but they will never know.
They never know. They never realize.
They will never know how much thought went into one response or one situation or scenario. They'll think it was just something that, you know, I just said on a whim, and that's one of the most frustrating things. Is that, you know, when I dive into a situation and I say something, or I explain something, or ask a certain question, or make a certain statement, or whatever it is, a lot of times people just think I just ran up and just freaking said it because I wanted to, you know what I mean? But I'm like, no, I thought about this forever. And sometimes it's frustrating because, like, you know, I just had this thought just now. I was thinking about just now, like telling somebody something. And I was like, yeah, you know, this is why it's important that I should tell this person this thing. And I was just thinking about it, and I was like, wait a minute, that would be a horrible idea. They'd hate that. And then I'm like, well, crap, I can't tell them that, but they're also going to be upset that I never told them. So what do I do? And then, like, I know this is going to go on for a while, and I'm going to be thinking about it later, and eventually have a solution they'll never even know.
It's like the most notorious thing to have a conversation with an INFJ and to really want and desire feedback, just for you guys to sit there like, knowing that there's something there in your head. There's like a million things that I can see, and it's probably because it's like we're kind of built almost the same way. Like, I'll give you an example. I was hanging out with my INFJ friend the other day, and we're catching up. We haven't seen each other for a while, and I'm telling her like what's been going on with my life, and then she's like sitting there like this, right? And I'm like, all right, well, like, I know that you're thinking about something. She's like, huh? What? What are you thinking? And I'm like, just tell me, what are you thinking? She's like, no, it's what I'm hearing you. I'm like, I know you're hearing me, but I want to hear what you're hearing and thinking.
Okay.
Yeah. And it's just like, I always call INFJs out because I know the look that you guys get when you have like, you get that idea and it like starts to make sense for you guys for whatever was said. And so like, I could say the word like tabletop and then like you have this look where it's like, and like you start doing this down thing, and then it's just like I'm like, all right, what are you thinking? And it's just really funny how you guys keep so much to yourselves.
Yeah, but I think it has two parts of it. First off, I think a lot of this nodding and this it's more of, first off, I understand his thought process. Like there's no judgment in it yet. Like I haven't really decided. Like, do I see it that way? Probably not because I don't see it the same way. It's just like I completely look at it from a different perspective. But I completely, and this is what I respect, and this is why not for myself, is I know your steps, I get your steps, and that's for me, I understand you, And the other thing is, I think even if we have like an idea concerning that, most people don't recognize it. Like, ENFJs are very rare too. Like, I don't think most people would sense what you're sensing, that I just had an idea. So I think a lot of INFJs are just not used to that somebody is interested in the idea they have at that moment. So they're not even that conscious of it, that they can just, even if there was an idea, they don't know that this is something they would share. But
part of that is it comes from extroverted sensing. It comes from the power of like analyzing behavior and knowing physical cues like that, right? And it just so happens that I've met a lot of INFJs. Where I live, there's meetups for INFJs, and so I get to spend a lot of time in the INFJ world. And so, and I dated an INFJ as well, so I'm very aware of how they work.
But I have also experienced that ENFJ I know got like frustrated and mad and so on, that he would just like kind of push my buttons and I would not react. And he would just keep on pushing my buttons in order for me to react, to kind of understand who I was, to kind of like give some kind of reaction so he can read anything out of me. And I was so scared to be read, so I just didn't say anything. And that like kind of built up the frustration even more.
And I want to talk about this a little bit too.
Wait, hold on, Trey. I just want to get to this first. But that's frustrating because in that situation, if he had just kind of like mutually and diplomatically just kind of like talked more about the way he saw the world with you and how you kind of grew together with intuition, you probably would have opened up more, right? If you would have engaged that that way, that would have
less judgmental. Yeah,
it would have allowed you to judge the way he thinks and be know who he is and how he sees things, to kind of go like, yeah, well, this is how I see things, And so
it was just really quickly, and then we just let it go to try. It was actually, I knew exactly what he was thinking because he was constantly saying what he was thinking, but he never like let room for me. Like this is like, as I said, I'm not saying ENFJs are that in general. This is in a place where I was at my worst and he was at his worst. So all this, and I think if ENFJs are more like that, they perceive and they give people room and acceptance, and they're not that judgmental as they can be when they're self-assured. Like you come across as somebody who's open and who like understands and wants to let other people express their opinion, then I would have been much more comfortable back in the day when I didn't have that much confidence to like open up and tell a little bit more about myself. But I had the impression every time I open up something, it triggered something. So that's why, yeah, exactly. There has to be a balance. INFJs have to learn to be okay with expressing themselves and not being liked. And ENFJs, to be open and listening to others and not be afraid that they will lose control if they just open their world to others.
Yeah, that makes sense. Trey, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I was just gonna say that it's pretty interesting when we take into account NI and TI in a weird way. With me, and I think I could hear it with Wences as well, is that anytime that I have a thought about somebody, the reason I don't really want to share it is because it's probably not true, or it might be true. And even if it is true, it's not that I'm judging them, and I don't want them to think that I'm judging them. At the same time, like, okay, I don't want to share it because it, they might think I'm judging them, but it also might not be true. And I haven't really decided on whether or not, I think it's okay, or if I think it's not okay, or I haven't decided this stuff yet. All I've had is a very small insight that may or may not be true, and it needs to be validated. And so it needs that TI check. And so I need to check it first. I need to make sure it all makes sense before I just say it. And so a lot of times there'll be a situation where, someone's kind of waiting for me to explain or express something, and I have a thought, like I have something I want to share. At the same time, it's like a very bad idea to share it because it may not make any sense. It may be completely wrong. I need to make sure that I think it through first. And so, I'll think it through. I'll go through that TI check. And then finally, even if I have that TI check, it's pretty interesting because where an INTP might go like, they might have like everything checked out and then they go, okay, and they've made a judgment. I always see NI like a gas, right? Like when I see like clouds or some gas form, I think of NI in a weird way. NI is kind of like the gas moving around, and like when it moves a certain direction, that's like an insight sort of. It's never actually made a decision. It's not concrete. It's not something solid. It's something that can be moved and it can be stirred around. And so when TI comes through, that's where it's a little bit more solid. It's got some kind of solidity to it, but at the same time, NI supersedes it. NI is first. So even if I have made a TI judgment and it all makes sense, I still have not made a judgment. I still do not judge based off of that criteria. You know what I mean? I don't make a decision or have any kind of judgment on the person, and like I might not judge them for their decisions. I may have reached some kind of conclusion that makes sense, but I still see it as like gas. You know what I mean? It might stir and change. And so that's always an issue because I don't want to share it if it doesn't make any sense, or if it might change, or if it, you know what I mean? And so there is this really big issue a lot of times with me. I don't really want to share something that could be wrong or whatever else.
See, I've actually been like this, and I've come to the conclusion that I have to share more knowing that it might be wrong. I think this is this thing, that they say when we get into a loop, and it's actually more healthy to realize that we're much stronger with FE. And see, what I do is I express myself so often that even if it's wrong, like 10 minutes later, I'll express something else, and that kind of like evens it out. And I have to trust that not the product, just the sum of all those things I do, they make some kind of sense. Because for me, I went way too much into this TI thing. I couldn't find a way to make it in a way that others would understand it. And that's when I got really depressed and so on. And for me, it was like a huge relief to just kind of say, well, I'm just going to express myself. I do it through music a lot. I do it through just like sudden things. I'm much more verbal and so on. And two things happen. And first off, you don't understand people that well, so it doesn't really bother you that much that they don't get you. It just happens like this. If you think of an ENTP, it's not like they're mean or anything or meaner. It's just like they don't feel what they're causing in the other person. And I think for INFJ, sometimes that's a good thing in a way of you have some kind of thought and find a way to express it, and then you need to let it out so new energy can flow in. And the more you just hoard in a way, and you think I have to make it more concrete before I put it out there, the more, the less energy flows. And yeah.
That's interesting because for me, as far as getting that validation and that judgment to be correct, that's why I'm so much into, I won't start building on an idea or insight until I have the facts first. And so, if I'm talking to you two right now, anything that you say, I don't start thinking about an idea that I have unless the idea is there first, and I would never kind of try to come from like understanding somebody without getting that kind of data firsthand. And then my NI can kind of go, okay, it's kind of like all these puzzle pieces, or actually how should I use the cloud? Like how there's all these smaller clouds around each other. And I'm like, oh, cool, look, there's all these small clouds. I'm just going to like kind of mush them together and then create a bigger cloud. And so it's kind of weird how I kind of try to gather those facts and create them into insights,
Yeah, I think that's the judging part in you, and to have like a system first, and also that you have more of TE. Like I've done and said things that are completely, crazy and stuff. And for me, it's okay because I know like from time to time this happens, but because I'm open to making like huge mistakes in a way, I also get like really good insights, and this becomes less and less. But this is, I think, a typical, first off, TE, that you do have TE, and second of all, the judging thing. And I think that's why more people understand ENFJs than INFJs. I think, ENFJs more can connect with more people because they do make sure that what they say is actually really possible to be happening. This whole INFJs are such conspiracy theory people. This happens because we sometimes express things without it having any basis, and it might make sense in the future or something. But I think that's also something that distinguishes both types.
We actually have some questions. One's this, if you want to maybe go into your ideas on them, and for both and for everybody. Sure. We have a question here. Have any of you developed specific strategies for communicating better with ST types? So sensor thinkers, yeah. ST temperament.
Okay, Trey, you want to start, and I can give my take on it as well.
Yeah, I think we're both kind of like, I don't know, I have to think about this one. But I'll try to conjure something up.
If you have to think about it, I can start because I have some experience.
Okay, all right, yeah, that'd be better.
You can think about it in the meantime. Maybe that will also, well, it depends. Like I'm very good with ESTPs and ISTJs. Like I've experienced that, and it's more of this perceiver kind of thing. Like my first boyfriend was an ESTP, and I was 16, and I still know him, but we were really close for like 4 or 5 years and stuff. So this had a huge impact in my life because I pushed like all those things I didn't want to do, I didn't want to deal with, like SE, for example. I pushed that onto him. He was taking care of all that stuff. And so it can have like a positive and a negative side. The negative side, of course, is that you don't develop that within yourself. But what I found was the best thing to deal with ESTPs in general, or specifically, was to just kind of tell them what's up. Like tell them like all those things that we're afraid of, not to tell people because it would hurt them or it would make them feel better, feel worse or whatever. Just to say it, like completely say it. And for me, it was very easy with the ESTP because he like crossed my boundaries right away. He started like, I think he flipped me off or something and made like fun of me. Like we were kids, but things like that. And he was actually trying to win me over. So it's not like he didn't like me, but he like completely was mean to me. And so I snapped, and I like, then I said, you can't talk to me like this. And I think this is something that happens with ESTPs or with ST types faster, that they reach that point in you when you say, fuck you, and from that point on it's good, because that's, I think, what you need with all those types. It's just to kind of like, they want to understand where your limit is and what they can do and what they cannot do, just so they know who you are. And as I said, easier for me with perceivers, and I've started with the ESTP. One of my good girl, a friend of mine, which is a girl, she's an ISTJ, and I developed a really good relationship with her the last years, which was I would have not been able to do when I was younger because we're so different. But I'm now more confident in saying what is important to me and being okay with that she doesn't like it. I think that's one of the main things. We're not okay that ST types don't like us. But once we're okay with that, then they come around, and we all come around because we understand, okay, we have differences, but then it's okay. And ISTP also good relationship. ESTJs till this day, I'm sorry, I can't do it. I'm like, this is just too much. Like, my cousin is an ESTJ, and like the best thing I have learned was not to give in. Like, this is exactly what I have to. Every time I try to try for harmony, try to have a good relationship, it always backfired on me. I say what I mean, I say what is important to me, and that pisses her off that she can't put her values onto me, and yeah, she kind of just disengages and goes away. So this is my best way to engage with ESTJs, just not to give up on my values. So
yeah.
That actually makes a lot of sense in my experience with the ESTJs, which actually is funny that you talk about them, because I was actually going to use them as the ST example. With STJs, you know, a lot of people say that you have a lot of conflicts with ESTJs, and like INFJs and ESTJs have a lot of conflict, and I can see why people say that for sure. But I think that, you know, as long as you stay, I mean, I think what it really requires is just a lot more effort than usual of trying to see their position versus your own. You know what I mean? I think a lot more effort, like almost as if you had to give extra energy validating their opinion or their action. Huh?
On both sides, like, it doesn't work if you do that and the ESTJ doesn't do it.
Yeah, I mean, in a way, I have to like give up some of myself. I have to like give a little bit more focus on their side versus mine. You know, where usually I try to equalize it in a way where everyone kind of gets the same amount of, you know, whatever, like maybe validation or just like thought as to whether or not they're doing who's doing the right or wrong thing or anything like that. I have to give a little bit more energy to them, just because I feel like there's some things that they're not going to see when I try to explain it to them. But I also know that it's just a big difference in just perception and what they're actually trying to accomplish. And so what I would say is, if you have an idea of what you think is right and wrong before you walk in, that you should just make sure that it doesn't change by the time you walk out just because of their brute force. Because ESTJs are likely to just carry you along into whatever they're already doing. And so I can see where, you know, that would be a big issue and it would cross the line for INFJs. But if you just be patient with them and just like work with them a little bit, you know, I don't know if ESTJs have conflict with INFJs. They probably do, because it's probably frustrating to have someone that can't mobilize anything whatsoever in their environment. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's a big conflict for them. They don't like it at all. I used to irritate Blake quite a bit because he'd look over and, you know, SI is a lot to do with the environment. And if I'm in his environment and I'm not moving and I'm not, you know, making something happen with my TE, you know, then you know, he's going to have an issue with it. INFJs have a really hard time mobilizing, and he would get really frustrated when I couldn't mobilize or move something. So yeah.
Wouldn't it be more, just like a quick question, isn't it more like also the TE thing? Like, for me, it was just, we just had different values. Like, I did not share her values, and that was the biggest issue with us, with ESTJs. Not so much the mobilizing part as it was this, like, I didn't, like, I just had my own perception, and I wanted her to accept that, and she didn't do it.
Yeah, I think the thing is we try to TI their values, which you can't do, because FI has personal values, and FETI is more about understanding it, making sure it all makes sense, and especially with NI and a simulated world, you know, would this make sense? Would this pan out? And that's something we're concerned with, while the FI user doesn't care. FI user, the values don't have to make sense because they've experienced it themselves, and that's enough. And so, but what I was actually doing was I was actually sharing my conflict with ESTJs, and then maybe a conflict an ESTJ might have with me. And the conflict they would have with me is that I don't mobilize or move anything. But there was something else really quick, just because the question was also ST. Just really quick, I want to say something about ESTPs. A lot of ESTPs are usually pretty random and pretty crazy and out there. When I moved in with my dad, my little brother is an ESTP, and you should have seen the change of having me around. And I'm not trying to like contribute to anything. Like I'm not trying to like take some kind of credit. Yeah. But it was crazy because like before he was so SE. Just always playing basketball. Always like just if I said something that he didn't like, or if he, didn't find it legitimate, he just tossed it aside and move on. And it was so funny because over time, like it took like a year, and we'd have a lot of fights. But after like a year, he would walk around and he would start stitching things together. Like it was so cool. It was like SCNI all the way. A lot of ESTPs have issues with NI. It was just I just want to comment on this because ESTPs and INFJs, they're a big topic when it comes to the INFJs. So with my little brother, it was interesting because before, where he wouldn't really care and he was just more about engaging and stuff like that, there reached a point where he'd come up to me and he'd be like, Trey, like so-and-so did that and this and this and that. And he'd be like, and I was wondering this. And he'll have like an NI insight almost. And I'm like, whoa, like what? You know what I mean? And he'll like get into it and he'll be sharing it with me. And I'll actually be able to talk theoretically with him because he had kind of learned NI in a way. You know what I mean? Because I feel bad for ESTPs in a way because how likely is it that they're going to find someone that has their inferior function as their dominant? You know what I mean?
All their functions, pretty much. I think with having an INFJ is even better than having an INTJ in your life because like that's how it was also with my ex-boyfriend. We had like the deepest talks and everything because we found like one channel. So I got more of SE and he got more into the IN, but I think like we have to like really not try to overrule the other one, but just like say these are my values and I'm going to stick to that because that also helps ESTP to kind of like shift into more of this INFJ thing. So we have to be firm in some things and not be completely fluid for them to be able to anchor onto us and then kind of like go into this NI world, which they want to have so much as I want to be a warrior, So, yeah. Okay.
Daniel, I'll let you. Well, I'm not gonna let you, but you should probably take that.
I was gonna say, as far as STs, for everybody out there who wants to learn how to communicate better with STs, real quick, look at communication style. Look at your communication style and the way that they would prefer to communicate. And somebody was saying this earlier in the chat. Aside from what ST types value, they're going to value very blunt, broad communication, very basic, very to the point communication. Their emphasis isn't on people; it's on what makes sense to them, right? And so you just have to put aside, if you're an NF, if you're an NT, you have to put aside either understanding something or understanding people or being with the people in that situation and just focus on the task at hand and be very straightforward. I used to be in car sales, so all I did was work with STs. And so my recommendation to everybody, because, I dealt with very extreme STs, not just, you meet an ST, at a coffee shop and like, you're like, oh, hey, what's going on? It's like work mode, what needs to be done kind of. And so the idea is you just kind of be curious. You always have to be curious with the person you're talking to always, regardless of who they are. You want to be interested and revalidate, what they're saying to you. And always after you revalidate and understand them and make it so like you show them that you understand them, then bring up your position, or just directly talk about the position that you have. If they're bothering you, just say, hey, you're bothering me because of this, and stop it. You know, they'll go, okay. They literally have no attachment, not in a sense to you, to humanity, but they don't have an attachment to taking it personally, right? And so you don't have to worry about, you know, harming, you know, an ST's, you know, mental space, because, you know, they really don't care. If something's bothering you, you're an INFJ or whatever type, just say it, you know, like it, and then worry about it later. Almost act like an ST. Say it then because it makes sense, and then deal with the consequences after, which is kind of like the reversal of like what we'd prefer being NFs. But, you know, you just got to learn to have thick skin sometimes, you know.
And I think for personal growth, it's exactly what we all need, ENFJs and INFJs, to be more like that. Because more like that, we put more of our values into the world, and then others can more experience of who we are. We can have better connections because we are authentic. Because if I think at that moment, you act like an idiot right now, and if I don't say it because I want to have harmony, I also, like, there's an authenticity and a personal connection I'm not having with that person because I'm not being honest, because I'm not telling them that I don't like what you're doing. But once I do that, as you mentioned, then there's a higher chance that it can be more honest and better. And of course, there's a balance. You know, you don't want to be an asshole all the time, but I mean, like, kind of like work against this fear of disharmony is sometimes the best way to grow.
Yeah, like somebody asked me a question in the chat, and they asked, you know, do ENFJs ever door slam, quote unquote, like INFJs do? Whereas the door slam is really just a lack of interest within that situation with a person, and then, you know, an INFJ having like their own courage to kind of just back off because it goes against your values, right? That person is just totally, you're not in synchronicity with that person anymore. It makes no sense, and you don't want to have those extra feelings that you know are bad. But similarly, NFs need to learn how to do that more in a way where they have a standard of how they want to carry themselves, right? Like for me personally, you know, I got sick and tired when I was younger of just giving people a million chances. You know, I was tired of just getting beaten up kind of emotionally. And then after like the 100th time getting beaten up emotionally, I'm like, all right, now I need to step away, because that just wasted so much time, and I didn't respect myself as much. But as I got older, you know, I tried fixating on what that person thought of me overall, and then I would make a decision based on how I knew this person to be with their actions and how they really are. And so, you know, I just kind of got thick skin over time, and, you know, it just came to a point where, like, you know what, you know, first time it's whatever, second time it's whatever, third time you're making it a habit, and this just isn't working. And I'd either communicate that, or I just, you know, leave the situation, because there's just some things, as you guys know, people really don't change. Because people do change, but people don't change as far as, you know, you telling them, hey, you do this, this, and this, and it bothers me. You may tell them once or twice. I'm sorry?
They change when you set a boundary.
Yeah, they change when you set a boundary, but they don't change themselves altogether. So, you know, from what I've come to realize is that, you know, to set up your own, you need to understand what your boundaries are, and so people don't cross them. That's super important for NF types, especially us.
Sorry. No, I just thought, I think that's something the ENFJs I've met are so much better at than INFJs. This is something this is one of the first things that was so obvious to me. And in my opinion, it's because exactly of that point that you made, that you did engage so much in your childhood and younger years with people, and you did, you know, fall on your nose. So you learned from it. And now you have very strict boundaries. And I think ENFJs carry them, like, naturally tend to have a higher standard of how they carry themselves and how they allow people to treat them. Yeah. I think ENFJs need a little longer to understand it, because they think, oh, I can take it, I will understand what's going on. And it takes a while for them to really get hurt so badly that they understand, no, I have to set boundaries, I have to set that. And that's something I've seen with ENFJs much more developed, and I think that's also something INFJs can learn from ENFJs. And I think exactly as you said, the best thing, because we are, 16 personality types, is exactly that, to have certain values and boundaries that we don't know that anybody cross, and we don't let us cross them ourselves. So for example, I have to be strict with myself that I don't allow those boundaries to be crossed.
Yeah, like this is actually really, it's an interesting area of discussion, because I've actually noticed this with every INFJ, especially my friend I'm going to relate to again. There's always this disagreement with how to approach people. And it's so vast. It's so weird how vast our perceptions like vary. Like for the INFJ, I know she really values her friendships, regardless if they're good or bad or they're negatively affecting her. She wants to just be in them and let things happen and let life kind of take its course with her friendships. Where I'm like, I hold everybody to a certain standard, to a very high standard, and I don't just keep people around me just for the sake of keeping people around me. That doesn't serve me any purpose, and it doesn't serve them. And I was explaining to her somebody that I had recently let go of my friendship circle, and she's like, well, but you have to look at the history, look at what you guys have been through, and like, but you guys have this friendship. This is how you have bonded together. And I'm like, no, at the end of the day, he's a negative influence on me, and I have to respect myself not to let myself be in that person, be in the vicinity of somebody who can negatively affect myself, right? Like you have to see yourself sometimes as like a certain average of health. And so if somebody's going to bring down your average of health, you owe it to yourself not to do that, right? And so she was just like self-destructing, right? And so it's interesting.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And because I was exactly like your friend. And I think for INFJs, very often we do kind of like attract negative people around us because it gives us a feeling of we're of service, because we are there to be like the ones who like kind of make them not, completely depressed. So I have a lot of people with, I used to have a lot of people who were very depressed all the time around me, thinking I'm worthy because I'm the one picking them up. And now I've learned exactly that, and I learned that from my ENFJ friend, exactly that I need to make sure that I'm healthy. And what I think a lot of INFJs don't understand is that once you have that standard of yourself and you kind of like set, like, I'm not going lower than this, most people will actually change and kind of like get better themselves. You actually set a standard for, I take care of myself, so you are allowed to take care of yourself as well. I think a lot of people think they don't, that
a lot of people don't. A lot of people take that factor that they deserve that. They deserve to treat themselves how they want to be treated. Yeah.
And that's what I was going to say earlier, is I was actually thinking about this. I think that both NFJs, I don't necessarily know, I haven't seen what you guys seem to have seen, in the sense that like I haven't seen the ENFJs and the ENFJs realize that they have some kind of inherent worth before the INFJs do. But I think that there is an issue with both of the NFJs, where for a while they think that they don't necessarily, they have to realize that they have some kind of personal worth. You know what I mean? It's almost like they do realize they have worth, but I just don't think they have a realization of where their worth comes into a conflict. You know what I mean? Where they may say, I have like a personal issue with this. A lot of NFJs, I think, aren't necessarily concerned with themselves in a conflict for a while, and they realize at some point that yes, they do need to recognize that they have some kind of say, or have some kind of part in this, besides some just spectator or equalizer. So yeah, I was going to comment on that. I just wanted to point that out.
So I want to get to some of these other questions, because this has turned into a lengthy live event. Although I love it. There's tons of people here, by the way. Wednesday, there's like 36 people here, and
watching.
So we kind of went into a lot of the first two functions. So we can take our pick. We can either go into more questions that people have had, Wenza, or would you rather talk about the tertiary function or the inferior and working more about areas of growth? So that's
I would suggest to like go with the questions, because we've also like talked so much about things we wanted to talk about. So I think it will be great to just.
So I'll open up the questions real quick. And by the way, everybody, if you guys have any questions, feel free to ask us. You know, we'll be wrapping this up maybe within 15 to 20 minutes, depending on how long it takes us to get through every part of these questions that we have. So we have.
We can have a part 2 answer.
We can do this all day, but.
Yeah, that's what I said. I mean, we can like say around like 2 hours, and then we'll just like pick it up.
Yeah.
And then.
So we have. Let's see. Could you guys talk about a bit about SE feeding into NI? Consciously and subconsciously, how do you guys handle the Dom NI, INF SE dynamic essentially? So I'm guessing that this is a question based around how do we utilize our extroverted sensing with our NI. And so I don't know if you want to start off with that, Wenza.
Yeah, you gonna start off, right?
Yeah, I can start. So when it comes to extroverted sensing for INFJs, I'll start. This is kind of like the gray area, as most of INFJs, their area of hardship is applying the extroverted data and valuing their extroverted sensing data to combining that with their intuition, right? And so really a common example is INFJs can really get to know somebody on a one-to-one basis, but then they can see the same person in a group setting acting differently. And then like their whole world is like, what? You're one way and now you're a totally different way around other people. Like, what is this? You know? And so, you know, this lack of understanding, this kind of the understanding of not just valuing people's insights to understanding them, but understanding how they're visually presenting themselves, right? And if that's matching up to their insights and the way that they are logically and what they value, and if that matches up to what they're physically seeing. And this kind of filter of saying, okay, this is what I know to be true about this person. This is what I know not to be true. This is what I see versus what they're saying. And so there's like this huge gray area here with people, for at least people. But it also kind of, it dives into other personal and professional situations, right? Overcoming situations in the workplace or overcoming personal situations that affect INFJs in a negative way, right? And then resolving them, and then getting to the point of resolving it and not just letting it happen anymore.
Taking control, yeah. And how would you say it for ENFJs?
ENFJs, as logic is the fixation for INFJs, where INFJs are very stimulated by logical conversation, and I don't know if you can attest to that. But for me, being an ENFJ and ENFJs in general, there's a fixation for kind of not being in the environment, kind of wanting to be in the environment, and we understand the need to do it. We understand the need to be more in our environment and to relate more to it, to do more things. But it's kind of hard though. We kind of are impulsive, and in another kind of way of seeing it, we're not in direct control of what we'd want to be in control of, right? And so there's things that I want to happen in my life, right? There's things like there's things that I need to get done, and there's places that I want to go to, but then I have the randomness of just the disorder of how everything happens, right? And so I'm not directly in control of what I kind of want. I can lean towards what I want to happen, but I can't necessarily have it come into fruition. Let's just say for like an ENTJ, one of our contributors, Damon, can just get things done in a very orderly and very timed and structured way. Whereas for me, I have like a pool of things that needs to get done, and I just kind of start throwing them against the wall once I want them to get done, right? And I sort of kind of scramble around. And, you may also notice that in your experience, that ENFJ you were talking about before, maybe when he was talking to you, he was always looking around if you're in a public place, right? Like when I'm around in a public place, I'm very fully engaged in the people I'm talking to, but I'm always looking around. If there's somebody new that comes in the room, I'm like, who's there, right? Almost like a squirrel, but like my attention really starts to disperse, right? And it gets segmented throughout the whole area. And so I struggle with actually being very present when it comes to people, right? So if I'm in like a room alone with somebody one-on-one, I'm great. But if I'm talking to the same person in this room of like 100 other people, it's going to be very difficult for me to really actually focus, right? And this is where my preference of being SXSP comes in, right? Is that I have this need to really want to focus on somebody, but when I have like a whole room of people, of possibilities of people I can potentially talk to, it gets very frustrating.
Very good. What I find is
there's an echo.
Oh, no, you can go ahead.
Okay. So, what I find very interesting is that you said that INFJs don't, like I want to also comment on ENFJ and INFJ. What you said that INFJs don't really see or are shocked how other people act in groups and so on. I think INFJs really lack this understanding of how they actually come across. Like I intellectually have an idea of how I come across. I have like this picture or everything. This is how I come across, but I don't think INFJs really have a feeling of that. I think that's why it happens that INFJs sometimes act so erratic or kind of weird in public sometimes, because they don't really have this, oh, okay, what you're doing right now is really completely nuts or something. Like I've done so many things, cool and not cool things, that just people were, how could you do that, based on I just have no idea that this is gonna be perceived so strongly. And I think for INFJs, incorporating SE in a healthy way, which has been like my thing, is to kind of become an ESTP internally. Like what I used to do is I had these episodes where I really went out and I did really extreme things and I did them really quickly. And like I've read it somewhere, it's like a crutch, but it was actually really like that. I had like all those, where I just partied really like a lot for a short period of time, or I got like really aggressive at some point, and all those things never brought me really happiness. But for me, it was really understanding, okay, you're never going to be SE dominant kind of thing. You're never going to perceive the world as you would even as an ENFJ perceive it, that you really see everything around you and so on. So I first had to accept that. And then I had to become, as I always said, like a warrior inside. This is how my entire life changed. Once I said, well, I want to get my ideas out. I want to accomplish things and so on. And kind of like I get my mental space into this warrior mode of, I want to achieve that. I want to do that. And in a broad sense of, just making tasks, like knowing that even if I think, well, it all doesn't make sense, I know that it's good for my mental health if I have like all these things. And I think this is how you actually incorporate SE healthy in an INFJ, is to really, get tasks, like go work out, go like have a schedule, go have goals, and just keep going them, not even thinking that, oh, this is going to have such a big sense, but knowing that this will make you happy because you do have this inner SE that you want to bring out somehow. And that's a really good way to incorporate that. And for ENFJs, what I have also experienced is this balance of SE and NI. Also, like as Trey said, that sometimes he always wants to go like TI before you like express it as FE. And that I said, I think it's in the long run healthier to just like kind of express FE. I think for INFJs, it's also like to kind of like be okay with not always being forceful. As you said, like you're scared that sometimes you can't accomplish certain things that you want to accomplish, and to be okay with that, to know that it is your third function. It's not like your first or second. Your second is NI, which gives you the strength to really understand the situation very well and much better than SE would. And that gives you the advantage point in your approach of life to have like, you know, FE as your main, then understanding so much around you, and then really taking action where it's necessary and not having to take action everywhere.
Yeah, and I actually wanted to bring this up. Another really great way INFJs specifically can really utilize their SE to make sense in your guys' world is, imagine this, like, you know, you said like go to the gym or to be more and to do things. You know, the idea is that, the inferior function is something that we don't, or sorry, sensing, you know, whether it's tertiary or inferior for you guys, you know, it's not as valued as much to put as much presence with. And so for you and Trey, for it to be inferior, the idea is that for it to be valued, you should use it in conjunction with your intuition, or with your emotional expression. And like, for an example, you could say, you know, I'm going to go to the gym not to only work out, but to gain insight into how to, you know, get better health, or to talk to so-and-so at the gym because I know they're at the gym. And so to kind of engage with insight and intuition in these activities.
To know that if you go for the gym, for example, I have more energy during the day, and I need that in order to do other things.
Yeah, exactly. But another thing is that to really engage in SE, you know, you should really not only have friends that bring that out with you and help you kind of orient towards SE, but really start valuing it in a sense where, you know, in the benefits it can give you in the areas that you love, right? Like, imagine this, like, why do INFJs go out of their homes to a meetup group about personal growth, right? It's an activity that actually engages their NI, right? So it's interesting, right? Why would an INFJ go to like maybe a philosophical debate, right? You know, going out where there's tons of people to go spectate something, right? It's very insightful. It brings that logical finesse, right? It kind of gives you both that stimuli for, you know, not only intuition but logic as well. And so the idea is to kind of start with your hobbies and what you'd like to do, what you think would interest you in the areas of intuition, and then, you know, start kind of expanding outward into actually getting more things done, right?
So interesting. I'll definitely use that, because I never really thought about it that way, as in, you know, for example, this NITI kind of thing, to like, you know, expand that.
Because the TI it's kind of like a fixation for INFJs from what I've seen. You know, you guys really love talking and really logically identifying with people like INTPs and INTJs and ENTJs. And so, you know, a common coupling I've seen with INFJs is INTJs. And then you can ask yourself, how do these two introverts actually manage to get out into the world and experience together? You know, how does that work if they're both inferior sensing, right? Well, guess what? They both have this fixation for logic in different ways and intuition. And so they mostly end up doing things together that involve that, right? And so you have this pairing of extreme introversion, but they go out so much because they are really looking at and search to expand on what they value.
Yeah.
Creating those experiences together.
I was going to say that I think earlier when you guys were talking about SE and how an INFJ is kind of less aware, I was gonna make a comment. I think a lot of people look at me like, just not necessarily people that are close friends that know enough about the theory that I can kind of discuss it with them, but like if you just take any random person that I may see every day, like maybe I go shopping at the same place every day and I go see them, right? If I go see them, they're gonna think I'm unaware for the most part. Almost everybody thinks this. They think I am completely oblivious to everything. Now, I kind of am, but I'm not, because I'll see something that I just see it, and then there's a whole other thing behind it. Every bit of SE I get gets turned into this big NI thing. So it's not necessarily that that I'm unaware, because I completely see something that probably a lot of the other people didn't see. But I do miss a lot of the actual physical environment. but the parts that I do see get turned into something. So what ends up happening is you have a lot of people that instead of like recognizing me as people might on my channel, where people on my channel might see me as somebody who, you know, is more intellectual and understands quite a bit, people in the real world around me will be like, no, what are you talking about? Like, you know what I mean? Like people like Damon, for example, know that I'm not, you know, just completely oblivious to everything. In a way I am, and we joke around a lot about it, but it's not necessarily how other people would see it, where they think I'm completely oblivious and I just miss everything. And that's just something that I'd like to point out. There was something else I was trying to share, but I can't remember what it was. But for the most part, I just wanted to comment on the idea that they're oblivious. I think a lot. Oh yeah, that's it. Okay, so a lot of times I think that INFJs, once they see something or understand something, they don't know how to act on it. And so I think a lot of times it makes them look even more oblivious. It's not necessarily that they weren't perceiving the things around them, but it's almost like, what do I do with this? Because they made it some big conglomeration of information that it's almost like, how do I actually actualize this? Or how do I, you know, what do I do with this? How do I decide on this information? So I think that, at least in my case, there's definitely a it's not necessarily that I'm aware, but it definitely looks like it because I don't know how to act on the information all the time. It's it can be conflicting sometimes, and so with Daniel, for example, you may be able to like use an insight as some way to equalize a conversation or utilize it in some form, but where I'm not actually looking to create that just yet. I'm more interested in the understanding of it, so I get all pulled into that. And then I'm like, oh yeah, I can use this. But then I'm like, but how? And like transforming it into something that I can utilize in a conversation is difficult because of the different ways people can take it. And what rationale they can use that may not even make sense, but it's popular rationale. And so, oh man, what do I do? Crap. Like, and so what ends up happening is I end up with this disconnect because I can't necessarily engage because of the consequences of, you know, yeah. So I think that it's not necessarily that INFJs are completely unaware, while there can be many things that, you know, are in my immediate environment that I totally miss. A lot of times I just don't know how to act on it.
I think it depends on if there's something behind it. Like I have this really good example, just like as a last point. My best friend, she had like red hair and then she changed it into like a lighter blonde, like a lighter brown blonde kind of color, and I didn't see it. Like I know it's just hair and who cares, but the point was I didn't see it, like I didn't realize it, and everybody else was so aware of it, and that's like something typical for INFJs. But the reason why I didn't see it is because she still has the exact same aura around her. Like if she really changed like something that would, in my opinion, change the way I would perceive her, like she would just change like her style or something that would make me perceive like all this NI stuff behind it. If something like that would happen, then I would see it. I think INFJs, and this comes back to the point that you made, Daniel, earlier with the place that you said, you know, when you see people in a lot of, in a group setting or so on, I think INFJs are oblivious on all those things that are surface. If there's nothing that we take from what's behind it, we miss it. Like I pick up on things that I can put some intuition behind it, and everything else that I can't do any difference, and it just doesn't stick.
Yeah, the focus it's in a different place. Whereas if you ask like an ISTP or an ISTJ, they're gonna right away see like exactly what's going on, or an ESTP, they'll see everything in the environment physically.
And you too, I think the ENFJs too. I think this is something that is like kind of like a segue thing between, like you can see how ISTPs would see it, and you can see how INFJs would see it. And so you, like I think exactly you and ENTJs are one of those types who can actually see that what the INFJs is missing. Because I can't see it. I'm actually missing it, so I cannot see what I'm missing. And
Yeah.
and
For me, it's like, that's what I was saying. Like, for me to have tertiary SE, it's in and out. It's like, I can see what's happened. Like in that example, I can see, oh, okay, yeah, this person did do something with their hair, but my fixation isn't. Also, it's the same thing as you, but it's in a different way. I miss so much in my environment when it comes to that stuff, because I'm so focused on people and their expressions. I can miss what color hair they have. Right, when I meet somebody, I forget their name right away. It's like I have a lot of the same struggles. They're just geared in different ways. My focus is the people and the communication and what I'm seeing, through physical expression, not necessarily what kind of purse that they have, or what color purse, or what hair style they have, what kind of color eyes they have.
But you would always remember their energy, right?
Yeah, I'll always remember the energy, if they were a good or a bad person, if I want to talk to them again, all that stuff.
This is breaking up over here.
Yeah, but yeah,
connection. I don't know.
Yeah, but I would be able to understand what I need from, to make future decisions with that person, just not the real time ways of, or the real time what I'm seeing from them.
Yeah.
But with that being said, we do have to wrap up this call. So what I'm going to do, it's been a while, and we can go on forever, it seems. But if you guys have any closing thoughts in the questions area, in the chat area, write it down so we can address it. Did you have any ending thoughts about this conversation?
Well, I love this conversation. I enjoyed it a lot, talking to both of you guys. Definitely throwing things around. It made a lot of sense. There wasn't any disconnect, I believe, in any of our conversations. So it was really great. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, I also very much appreciate it, because I was actually nervous. I didn't know, because normally if I talk about it, it's more like a monologue kind of thing. So I didn't really know what I was getting into, but it was so easy with you two, and it's just interesting, It's just I'm sitting here and I'm excited to listen to both of you and your insights and the way you perceive it. And I'm also thankful for all the questions, so people engage as well. And I hope we can all make it soon. I also promised Daniel to kind of like do it the latest, like the end of next month on my channel, that I invite you guys, and we can just like kind of rotate.
Yeah, we're actually going to do a live event on her channel, everybody. So if you are tuning in right now to this, live or not, a month from now, we're going to be on her channel and discussing different topics. So make sure to catch us there. And also, if nothing else needs to be said, thanks everybody for tuning in to this very long cast. I know INFJs are always a point of interest in the type community, but I hope this kind of gives a better perspective on INFJs and the inner workings of the NFJ types. So feedback is definitely appreciated. Please like and subscribe to this live stream if you liked it. Aside from that, join our chat rooms if you're not involved already. I know Trey was mentioning a couple of things that you may not be aware of. We have MBTI chat rooms, so people can actually message people and meet new people in the community in a real time kind of way. So join those, and we have a forum on our website. But aside from that, just watch out for more live streams that are scheduled and not. So this was kind of a surprise. I wanted to do this kind of like under the radar. And just kind of throw a surprise out there to the people who follow us. But this was a pretty big following for today. For something that wasn't scheduled, we got a lot of viewers. So thanks guys for tuning in. And aside from that, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you for setting that up, Daniel, and everything, right?